From 1936 to 1967, according to records, 57 people tragically lost their lives aboard this cruise liner, and countless more that were never recorded. It is now known as one of the most haunted places in the world. We will take a look back in time and see what we can find tonight on Dark Lore.
Like and subscribe.
Warning: some of the content of this video could be disturbing to some. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello and welcome. I am the Lore Keeper. Those who wish to venture into the world of the paranormal have come to the right place. This is the first part of a series where we will discuss what are considered to be the most haunted places in the world, and the stories behind them as accurately as possible. This is the Tale of the Queen Mary.
After a triumphal journey down the west coast of Britain, the Queen Mary arrives at Southampton, and once more the tugs take her in hand. And everyone who sees her agrees that she's the smartest and most up-to-date ship that has ever been seen in the docks, or nearly the most up-to-date.
The year was 1936. The Great Depression was still raising unemployment. Jesse Owens dominated the track and field events at the Olympics, embarrassing Nazi Germany. And beginning its maiden transatlantic voyage was the Queen Mary. Measuring at over 1,000 feet long, it was larger than the Titanic and almost double the weight. Launching a ship of this size required them to widen the river and add on 18 drag chains to the back of the ship to slow its progress into the river. With Germany launching its own ocean liners, Britain didn't want to be left behind in the shipbuilding race, and they certainly delivered. While the Queen Mary was second in size only to the SS Normandy, it consistently won the Transatlantic Speed Award for many years, and not only was she fast, but she was also quite luxurious. Filled with traditional and Art Deco designs, it was certainly Britain's most prized ship at the time. Among facilities available on board the Queen Mary were 2 indoor swimming pools, beauty salons, libraries, children's nurseries, a music studio, lecture hall, telephone connectivity to anywhere in the world, and outdoor tennis courts. The cabin class main dining room featured a large map of the transatlantic crossing. During each crossing, a motorized model of the Queen Mary would indicate the vessel's progress en route. But throughout the different eras of its tenure, the Queen Mary would see tragedy after tragedy befall not only the people below and above her decks, but another ship would fall victim to her as well. Record. From what I can currently find, we know 57 people died on board based on a list of names from death records, but records weren't kept during World War II, so estimates put that number much higher. One crew doing a 3-week paranormal study claimed over 600 ghosts roam her halls. I want to note that longtime ship historians have accused many content creators, including people like Shane Dawson, of seemingly exaggerating or completely fabricating some stories, so I have done my due diligence to weigh the most credible sources over any others. As you can see, the vast majority were recorded as natural causes, which is not uncommon given the time period. The rest of the list vary from crushings, accidental falls, accidental poisonings, people going overboard, and even a few listed as unknown. There is also the case of the HMS Caruso collision. As we trace her path through time, we'll hear some of their stories. The beginning. Following her maiden voyage, during what we will call her first transatlantic era, the Queen Mary ran its route from 1936 to 1939. 3 of the deaths on record, 2 heart attacks and a skull fracture, happened during this time. Although surely tragic, these numbers seemingly aren't out of the ordinary. By 1939, the Second World War had been declared, and the Queen Mary was ordered to stop operations until 1940, when she was converted into a troop ship to help with the war effort along with many other liners. In the conversion, the ship's hull, superstructure, and funnels were painted navy gray. Combine that with her great speed and she became known as the Grey Ghost. To protect against magnetic mines, a degaussing coil was fitted around the outside of the hull, which altered the ship's magnetic field. The Queen Mary is one of the largest and fastest troop ships involved in the war, often carrying as many as 15,000 men in a single voyage, and often traveling out of convoy and without escort. Their high speed and zigzag courses made it virtually impossible for the German U-boats to catch them. But sadly, in 1942, there would be an accident. The Queen Mary, traveling at 28.5 knots, caught up with the Caruso. The two ships collided. Both the Queen Mary and the HMS Caruso thought that they had the right of way. I said to my mate, "You know she's zigzagging all over the place in front of us. I'm sure we're going to hit her." And sure enough, the Queen Mary sliced the cruiser in two like a piece of butter, straight through the 6-inch armored plating. Alfred Johnson, on board the Queen Mary. The Caruso was cut in half by a vessel 20 times its size, with the halves settling nearly 100 yards away from each other. Crewmen on the Caruso were reportedly so shocked that they were frozen, while some were trapped in the remains of the vessel. At the time, protocol prevented the ship's captain, Cyril Illingworth, from stopping to help because the threat of being found by an enemy U-boat was too great, and the Queen Mary was carrying 10,000 troops. The captain reported the incident to nearby British destroyers. By the time they responded, 2 hours had passed, and many who waited for rescue had died from hypothermia. It is estimated that over 300 people died in the accident. There were 5 recorded deaths on board during World War II, but the Queen Mary transported tens of thousands of troops and prisoners during the war. And, as stated before, deaths on board went mostly unrecorded during the war, so we really have no idea how many lives were lost. Many prisoners came on board severely wounded, and most likely did not survive long. On one voyage, she had 18,000 bodies on board, the most ever recorded in history on any vessel. It is believed that many troops and prisoners died on board, and a chef whose cooking was so bad that the crew shoved him in the oven. But these are unconfirmed. After the war, in her second transatlantic era, between 1947 and 1967, the Queen Mary was refitted for passenger service. Following her refit, she dominated the transatlantic passenger trade as a weekly express service through the next decade. It's in this time period we see the rest of our recorded passings. Our first notable event of this time occurs in 1948. Just 1 year later, the records show that a third-class passenger named Walter J. Adamson was found dead in room B-226. It was unclear how he passed. One rumor suggests murder. Room B-226 was later converted to room B-340. This room will come up again in our story later. The next year, in 1949, William Eric Stark, the senior second officer, was asked by the captain to go down to the captain's cabin and prepare drinks for the captain, himself, and a couple other officers who were about to be off duty. He requested gin with limes. Stark went down to the cabin but was unable to find the gin in the dim light. He requested help from the captain's steward, who came to his aid and located the bottle he believed to be gin, before passing it off to Stark to make the drinks. Later on, Stark caught up with the Captain McCallum and commented about the gin tasting funny. It was then that the captain realized that Stewart had mistakenly grabbed the old gin bottle in the cabinet that now contained carbon tetrachloride, a highly toxic cleaning fluid that they used to clean their furniture. The captain immediately contacted the ship's doctor, who ordered Stark to have his stomach pumped. By all reports, Stark didn't think it was a big deal. Not only did he refuse to have his stomach pumped, he drank gin and lime with the officers later on. Numerous crewmen testified that Stark treated the whole incident lightly and joked it off. By the next day, his health was in decline. Once the Queen Mary reached Southampton, Stark was rushed to the Royal Southampton Hospital. His wife asked him why he refused to get his stomach pumped, and he said, "I didn't think anything of it."
Officer William Eric Stark would succumb to carbon tetrachloride poisoning on September 23, 1949, 2 days before his 31st birthday. Year after year, the post-war era would see more souls added to the ship's records. One of those would be 18-year-old John Pedler, who was working as a fireman. In the early morning hours of July 10, 1966, he was participating in a safety exercise when he was crushed in watertight door 13. The mechanical door was located in the engine room, and the ship was sailing across the Atlantic at the time. He is known as one of the most popular spirits on board to commune with. On September 27, 1967, the Queen Mary was retired from service after her 1,000th journey, but this is not the end of her story, or those who decided to stay.
In 1971, after her retirement, the Queen Mary was opened to tourists and eventually converted into a hotel in Long Beach, California. Since then, countless people have reported seeing and hearing strange things on board.
The encounters.
With so many reported encounters on board, it's hard to know where to start. Remember stateroom B340? Just this room alone has a large volume of recorded paranormal activity with many stories of haunted encounters noted in the ship's logs. Reports date back to the final ocean voyage in 1967 and include complaints from guests staying in
B340
claiming that someone was knocking on the door in the middle of the night. Other complaints include bathroom lights turning on by themselves, the sink faucet turning on and off on its own, and unexplained bathroom doors shutting. Some guests have reported the covers of their bed being pulled off while asleep, and waking to see a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. Since the 1980s, no one was allowed to stay in stateroom B340 until 2018 when they opened it back up for reservations.
John Pedler,
or Half-Hatch Harry as some have come to know him, is known to haunt around watertight door 13. The door was removed when the ship was converted into a hotel, but there have been reports of greasy handprints around the area. It has become one of the more popular locations for ghost hunters. A girl named Jackie is the subject of another sad end. Jacqueline Torres was 5 or 6 when she drowned in the ship's second-class pool, which is now the Royal Theater. Visitors report hearing little Jackie splashing, calling for her parents, and even responding to questions when prompted. Some visitors believe that Jackie has a friend, Sarah, who drowned in the same pool in 1949. Some people have even reported feeling a child
squeezing their hand.
John Henry, just like little Jackie, has a sad story of his own that has inspired ghost hunters to try to reconnect with his spirit. Henry worked in the boiler room, and it was here that his remains were found. There is one source that suggests he may have lied about his age to get a job on board. Ghost hunters report seeing Henry's shadowy figure lurking between the boiler room and the green room. Some even claim to have spoken with Henry,
who sometimes audibly responds to questions about beer.
Grump, also known as Grumpy the Growling Ghost, whose actual identity is not known, is especially memorable because he tends to growl at visitors. One rumor suggests Grumpy was a murderer who was hiding under the stairs, but when he was found out he committed suicide. There is no proof to suggest that. Grumpy is said to lurk in a room under the stairs near the first-class swimming pool, and sometimes he joins John Henry in the boiler room. Some people claim to have recorded Grumpy.
Captain John Treasure Jones
was the last captain of the active Queen Mary, sailing the ship from 1965 to 1967 and captaining her final voyage from Southampton to Long Beach. This earned him some serious credit in the maritime community, transforming him into a media figure following the vessel's retirement. He died at age 87 in 1993. Jones was well known on the ship for his affinity for cigars, and visitors sometimes still report smelling cigar smoke in the captain's quarters. Some ghost researchers suggest that a person doesn't need to die at a location for their spirit to rest there, or not rest in this case. One of the creepiest stories I came across of the Queen Mary's onboard deaths is that of someone who murdered a young woman named Dana and her family in room B474. The killer strangled Dana's little sister and mother on the bed, and then shot Dana to death in the bathroom. It's then said that he committed
Suicide.
but as grisly as this story sounds, there's no record of it. Dana's spirit is said to be found lurking with the other ghostly children in the second-class pool, and sometimes joins Grumpy and John Henry in the boiler room. Remember the chef that was shoved into the oven during World War II? Some encounters allude to him being the
Poltergeist of the kitchen.
Other encounters include a woman in a white flowing dress has been seen in the Queen's salon, sometimes dancing alone. She often floats towards
The piano.
2 women who reportedly drowned in the first-class swimming pool. One apparition appears in 1930s clothing and the other in 1960s attire. There are also reports of a little boy who fell overboard near the pool who now haunts the passageway. The tourist-class swimming pool is also haunted by a woman who drowned there. The first-class suite area is haunted by a man with black hair in a 1930s suit, and children can be heard playing near a storage room where the ship's archives are kept.
So is the Queen Mary haunted? With its long history and countless encounters, I would say I'm pretty convinced. But don't take my word for it. You could book a room and find out for yourself. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Please like and subscribe. With enough support, I may be able to even move my hands.